The sound of a child's frightened whimper echoed through the marble halls of Meridian Tower at 11:47 p.m., cutting through Marcus Thompson's heart like a blade. In his 8 years of cleaning this gleaming monument to corporate success, he had never heard anything so heartbreaking. The little girl couldn't have been more than 6, curled up in a ball beneath the reception desk, her tiny shoulders shaking with each silent sob that escaped her lips. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her patent leather shoes scuffed, and her dark curls were disheveled as if she'd been running. But it was her eyes that stopped Marcus cold day wide, terrified, and utterly alone. Marcus set down his mop bucket with deliberate care, his calloused hands trembling slightly. At 42, he had learned that life could shatter in an instant. His own daughter, Ma, was the same age as this frightened child, and the protective instinct that surged through him was overwhelming. The building was supposed to be empty except for security and cleaning staff. How had a little girl ended up here, alone and terrified, in the middle of the night? "Hey there, sweetheart," Marcus whispered, crouching down slowly, keeping his distance so he wouldn't frighten her further. The child looked up at him with tear-stained cheeks, her lower lip quivering. She didn't speak, just stared at this gentle giant in his janitor's uniform who had appeared like a guardian angel in her darkest moment. Marcus had always been a whistler. It was something his own father had done, a soft, melodic tunes that could calm the most restless spirit. When Emma couldn't sleep after her mother left them 2 years ago, Marcus would sit by her bedside and whistle gentle lullabies until her breathing steadied and peace returned to her small face. Now, instinctively, he began to whistle a soft rendition of "You Are My Sunshine," the notes floating through the cold corporate air like a warm embrace. The transformation was immediate. The little girl's sobbing gradually subsided, her rigid posture began to relax, and she lifted her head to look at this kind stranger who was offering comfort without asking for anything in return. Marcus continued whistling, slowly moving closer, until he was sitting cross-legged on the polished floor just a few feet away from her hiding spot. "My name's Marcus," he said softly when the last note faded. "What's yours?" "Sophie," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's a beautiful name, Sophie. Are you hurt? Are you lost?" She shook her head, then nodded, then shrugged, as if she didn't quite know how to answer. "Mommy said she'd be right back, but that was a really long time ago." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He glanced around the empty lobby, his mind racing. This was Victoria Sterling's building. Everyone knew that. The Sterling family practically owned half the city, their names synonymous with wealth and power. But money couldn't buy the peace this little girl needed right now. "Well, Sophie, how about we wait for your mommy together? I was just about to take a break anyway." Marcus settled more comfortably on the floor, completely abandoning his cleaning duties. "Do you like stories?" Sophie nodded eagerly, creeping a little closer to this man whose eyes held the same warmth her father's used to have, before the accident that took him away forever. As Marcus began telling her about a brave little princess who could talk to animals, 30 floors above them, Victoria Sterling sat in her corner office, her head in her hands, tears streaming down her face. The most powerful woman in the city, worth billions, feared by competitors and revered by subordinates, was completely falling apart. The custody hearing had been brutal. Her ex-husband's lawyers had painted her as a cold, career-obsessed mother who put business before her daughter. They claimed she was unfit, that Sophie would be better off with her father's parents in California. The judge hadn't ruled yet, but Victoria could see the doubt in his eyes. She had rushed back to the office after the hearing, needing the familiar comfort of her empire, but instead found only crushing loneliness. Sophie was supposed to be with the nanny, but Mrs. Henderson had called in sick, and Victoria's assistant had somehow misunderstood and brought Sophie to the office. In her emotional turmoil, Victoria had completely forgotten her daughter was in the building. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She had left Sophie alone, again, just like they said she always did. Meanwhile, Marcus was discovering that Sophie was extraordinary. She spoke with a vocabulary far beyond her years, told him about her pet goldfish named Bubbles, and confided that she missed her daddy who was in heaven with the angels now. When she asked about his family, Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her pictures of Emma. "She looks just like you," Sophie said, tracing Emma's face on the screen. "Is she your princess?" "She sure is," Marcus smiled. "And she's probably fast asleep right now, dreaming about tomorrow's adventures." "I wish I could sleep," Sophie said wistfully. "But everything's scary when Mommy's not here." Marcus began whistling again, this time a gentle version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Sophie's eyelids grew heavy, and she unconsciously scooted closer to him, until she was leaning against his arm. He could smell her expensive shampoo and feel how small and fragile she was. This child, who had everything money could buy, was missing the one thing that mattered most: someone to simply be present with her. "Marcus?" Sophie murmured sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart, are you an angel?" "Mommy says Daddy sends angels sometimes." The question nearly broke him. "No, honey, I'm just a dad who understands that little girls need to feel safe." 20 minutes later, the elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Victoria Sterling rushed out, her hair disheveled, her makeup smeared, her designer suit wrinkled from hours of anguish. She had searched every floor, checked every conference room, her panic mounting with each empty space. The sound of soft whistling from the lobby made her freeze. There, on the cold marble floor of her corporate fortress, sat a man in a janitor's uniform, gently stroking her daughter's hair as Sophie slept peacefully against his side. He was humming now, so quietly that Victoria had to strain to hear it, his weathered hands careful and protective around her most precious treasure. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. In all her years of power lunches and boardroom victories, she had never witnessed anything so beautiful. This stranger, this employee she had probably passed 1,000 times without really seeing, had given Sophie something Victoria, with all her wealth and influence, had been failing to provide: simple, unconditional presence. Marcus looked up and saw her standing there, tears streaming down her face. He didn't move abruptly, didn't want to wake Sophie, but his eyes met Victoria's with understanding and compassion rather than judgment. "She's been waiting for you," he whispered. Victoria approached slowly, her knees nearly giving out from relief and gratitude. "I'm so sorry," she breathed. "I forgot she was here." I was dealing with some legal issues and I completely." "She's safe," Marcus said simply. "She's a remarkable little girl. You should be very proud." As Victoria knelt beside them, Sophie stirred and opened her eyes. "Mommy," she whispered, reaching out with sleepy arms. Victoria gathered her daughter close, breathing in her familiar scent, feeling her warm weight, marveling at how Marcus had managed to calm the child who had been having nightmares for weeks. "Thank you," she whispered to Marcus, the words inadequate for what he had given them both. "Just doing what any parent would do," Marcus replied, but Victoria shook her head. "No, this was something more, something special." Over the following weeks, Victoria found herself thinking constantly about that night. She learned Marcus's full name, discovered he was raising his daughter alone, working 3 jobs to make ends meet, yet had still taken time to comfort a stranger's child. She began really seeing the people who kept her empire running: the security guards who knew everyone's names, the maintenance workers who took pride in their craft, the cleaning staff who worked tirelessly while the city slept. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was profound. Victoria started leaving her office earlier, spending evenings with Sophie instead of reviewing contracts. She instituted new policies that provided better benefits and recognition for all employees. She established the scholarship fund for children of service workers, naming it the Marcus Thompson Foundation, though she never told him about the honor. Most importantly, she fought the custody battle with a new understanding of what truly mattered. When she spoke to the judge about her love for Sophie, her words carried the authenticity that only comes from genuine change. The ruling came down in her favor, but Victoria knew the real victory was in the relationship she was rebuilding with her daughter. Marcus never knew the full impact of that night. To him, it was simply what any decent person would do: offer comfort to a frightened child. He continued his work, continued raising Emma with the same gentle strength he had shown Sophie, continued whistling soft melodies that brought peace to troubled hearts. But Sophie never forgot the angel who appeared when she needed him most, the man who taught her that kindness could come from the most unexpected places. Years later, When she took over her mother's company, she would remember that lesson and ensure that every person who walked through those marble halls was treated with the dignity and respect that Marcus had shown her in her moment of greatest need. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with the smallest acts of humanity, a soft whistle, a gentle presence, and the understanding that in our darkest moments, we all need someone to simply sit with us on the cold, hard floor and remind us that we are not alone. In a world that often values wealth and power above all else, Marcus Thompson had shown that the greatest riches come from the connections we make and the comfort we offer, one frightened child at a time.